Okay, let's unpack this. You've handed us, well, quite a stack of sources, articles, notes, research, and it's all focused on one specific place, Gillitts in South Africa.
Right.
And our mission here, basically, is to dive into all that material you sent. We need to pull out the most important bits, the really interesting facts, the insights that define Gillitts.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it as a shortcut for you. We're sifting through everything to give you that clear picture, that real feel for the place, based only on what's in these sources.
Get you up to speed fast.
Mhm.
So, starting with the basics, the geography. Where is Gillitts exactly? The sources put it inland from Durban, right?
About 22 miles. That's roughly 35 kilometers inland. And crucially, it's higher up, quite a bit higher.
How high are we talking?
Around 1,800 feet, maybe 600 meters above sea level. And that elevation, well, the sources really stress this. It's key.
Key to the climate, I bet. Different from Durban.
Oh, completely. Durban's down there, semi-tropical, really humid a lot of the time. Gillett, being higher, is generally described as being above that sticky humidity.
Ah, sounds nice. Bit of relief.
It does, but it's not quite that simple. The sources point out it's in the mist belt.
Mist belt, so lots of mist.
Yeah, apparently quite common. And interestingly, the sources captured different views on this. Some residents, well, they find it a bit dreary, a nuisance.
Look at that.
But others, they actually welcome it. They see it as a bit like a natural air conditioner, a break from the humidity that can still affect the wider area.
Two sides to it, then. Depends who you ask.
Exactly. It shows how local weather really shapes the experience. But despite the mist, the sources are clear. It's a warm climate year-round. No frost, no snow.
Good to know. Okay, so zooming out a bit on the map, where does Gillitts fit in relation to its neighbors?
Well, the sources place it right in what's called the upper highway area. You've got Hillcrest and Kloof nearby, bigger places.
And the whole area gets that name, Upper Highway, because of the M13 road, right?
Yeah, the M13 highway cuts through there, connects those places.
You mentioned Hillcrest and Kloof. The sources apparently draw a contrast about growth.
They do. It sounds like Hillcrest and Kloof have seen, well, pretty rapid expansion, lots of development. Gillitts, on the other hand, much more stable growth.
Stable. Why is that? Did the sources say?
Yes, and it's quite straightforward, really. There's just very little land left in Gillitts for major expansion. It's kind of hemmed in.
Okay, so it couldn't just sprawl outward.
Exactly. And the sources suggest this limitation actually sort of helped preserve its character. Development had to be more organic, smaller scale. It helped keep that rural feel we talked about.
That's fascinating. Limited space as a preserver of character. Right, let's shift to history. The sources dig into the origins. Yeah, it wasn't always a suburb.
Not at all. It started life as one huge farm. Really extensive.
Covering the whole area, like Hillcrest and Kloof, too.
At one point, yes, according to the sources. This one farm covered what's now the entire upper highway region. Then, over time, it was gradually sold off in pieces.
Wow. And the sources mentioned something amazing still survives from that time, the farmhouse.
Yes. The original farmhouse, apparently over 100 years old, it's still standing.
No way. Where is it?
It's actually tucked away on the grounds of the Gillitts driving range and a 9-hole Mashie golf course.
On the golf course. That's cool.
Yeah, and the sources even add a little detail. They say this Mashie course is considered one of the best designed of its size in KwaZulu-Natal, KZN. So you've got this historic farmhouse right there.
That really connects the past and present. Okay, thinking about the layout today, the M13 highway we mentioned, Gillitts runs along it.
Pretty much straddles it, yeah. The M13 runs from Durban out towards a place called Essege, and Gillitts is along that stretch.
And that M13 replaced an older road?
It did, the old main road. But interestingly, a big chunk of that original old main road is still a major route running through the southern side of Gillitts today.
So bits of the old road network are still key.
Definitely. And another main road the sources identify as Stockville Road.
Stockville Road. And there's something specific about that area in the sources, isn't there? About the community.
Yes. The material notes a large ethnic Indian population living in the area off Stockville Road.
And that brings a specific cultural element.
It does. The sources specifically mention the sounds, the sights, fireworks doing traditional Indian festivals like Diwali and also for New Year's. Gives you a real sense of local life and celebrations there.
Right, adds another layer to the place. Okay, let's zoom in again. The sources focus a bit on the northern side, Gillitts Park.
They do. Gillitts Park is basically the northern half.
Yeah.
And it's described primarily as a greenbelt residential area.
Greenbelt meaning lots of trees, space.
Exactly. And crucially, the sources highlight an almost complete lack of commercial or industrial development there.
Really? So just houses?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Apart from people working from home, there's maybe one small office building mentioned, and the Emberton Golf Course complex, which has the driving range and a coffee shop. But otherwise, it's overwhelmingly houses and gardens.
And the plot sizes contribute to that feel, I gather. The sources mention something about that.
Yeah, quite striking. Most properties are apparently on a minimum of half an acre.
Half an acre. That's pretty big for suburbs these days.
It is. Really adds to that spacious green atmosphere. The sources do also mention there are some clustered developments dotted around, maybe 200 units total. Augusta Golf Estate is given as an example.
It's a bit of a mix, but mostly large plots.
That seems to be the dominant character of Gillitts Park, yes.
And running right through this green residential area, there's a train line, an old one.
Yes, the old Durban to Pietermaritzburg line. It actually winds its way right through the neighborhood.
Is it still used?
Well, according to the sources, not for regular passenger trains anymore. But it's definitely not derelict.
Ah, this is where that steam train comes in, right? The Jenny Steam Railway.
Exactly. The sources explain they use a section of this line for a tourist train. It's quite popular.
When does it run?
Just on the last Sunday of every month, they run it from Kloof Station down towards Cato Ridge, so it passes right through Gillitts.
And the engine has a name. The sources mentioned. Maureen.
That's her, Maureen. A beautifully restored steam engine from 1912, a Class 3BR number 1486, if you want the specifics from the source.
Wow.
And the sources really capture the atmosphere. They describe the sound of her whistle echoing through Gillitts on a Sunday morning. It's painted as this, evocative sound, a reminder of a quieter time.
I can almost hear it. What about the actual Gillitts station building? Is it still there?
It is, yes. Right there on the line. The sources say it's derelict now, unused, which is a shame.
Yeah.
But they also make a point of saying it's still beautiful. A lovely example of railway architecture from around 1900.
And that station, it saw some history, didn't it? Back in the Boer War.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
The sources link it directly to the conflict. Apparently, during the war, Gillitts Station was a key stop. British soldiers passed through on their way from Durban up to the battlefields in the Midlands.
And coming back, too.
Yes, including the wounded soldiers. It was a transit point.
So the Boer War history is quite embedded there, more than just the station.
Much more. The sources state that the original Gillitts farm, the big one we talked about, actually had a garrison of British troops stationed on it during the war.
Really? A garrison?
Yeah, and they left their mark. The sources say they built a small dam there for water supply. And they set up a camp.
Which is why there's a Camp Road.
That's the connection the sources make, yes.
Yeah.
Camp Road is named after that British camp.
And the dam. Is it still there? That would be amazing.
It is. Still there today. The sources confirm it exists within a sort of natural park area, quite picturesque, nestled among houses on Ashley Drive.
Wow.
And it's not just a relic. It's described as a living ecosystem. It's got fish bass, barbel, and waterfowl. A functioning piece of history still supporting wildlife.
A Boer War dam, still full of life. That's incredible. And that actually leads us neatly into another big theme from the sources, the environment. There seems to be a strong conservation ethic.
Very much so. The Gillitts Conservancy gets mentioned as being very active, and the prime example the sources highlight is the Ifithi Nature Reserve up in northern Gillitts.
Ifithi Nature Reserve. Tell us the story. The sources lay it out right.
They do. It's quite a success story. So the reserve is in a valley, but for about 50 years, up until 2001, this valley was just choked with invasive trees, blue gums specifically.
Ah, blue gums. Yeah, they can take over. So it was a problem area.
A major one.
Yeah.
But here's where the community comes in, according to the sources. Residents whose properties bordered this valley, they got organized, formed a committee.
And decided to clear it.
Exactly. They contracted a logger to take out the blue gums. But here's the really clever part the sources mention.
Go on.
The timber from those blue gums was actually quite valuable. So the logger paid the committee a lump sum for the wood.
Get out! They got paid to remove the invasive trees.
That's what the sources say. Brilliant, isn't it? And they didn't just pocket the money.
No, what did they do?
They plowed it straight back into creating the nature reserves. Used the funds to fence off entrances, build pathways, viewing decks, and crucially, plant indigenous species.
Wow, so the solution funded the restoration. That's fantastic community action.
Totally self-started and self-funded, based on the sources.
So what's the Ifithi Reserve like now, after all that work?
It's described as thriving. About 15 hectares of indigenous forest, wetland, grasslands. A proper mosaic habitat.
Supporting wildlife.
Loads of it, apparently. Numerous bird species, small mammals. The reserve is named after the Ififi, a small antelope, so presumably they're there. Plus porcupines, other small buck like duiker, and that dam we mentioned, the old Boer War one, it's part of the reserve, full of fish.
It sounds like a real local gem. Do people use it?
Oh, yeah. The sources say the paths and benches are very popular, especially on weekends. Residents really make use of it.
And the sources connect this environmental success back to the character of the area.
They do. They link the thriving wildlife, hundreds of birds, mammals, back to those large plot sizes, the lack of industry, and the active environmentalists in the community. It all works together. The space allows it, and the people protect it.
That's a really powerful example. Okay, let's shift focus slightly to a challenge the sources mention, crime, specifically house breakings.
Yes, the material highlights an upsurge in residential break-ins during the first half of 2009.
And this was unusual for Gillitts Park.
The sources frame it that way, yes, saying that because it was traditionally a bit out of the way, it hadn't suffered crime quite as badly as some other areas. So this felt like a significant negative change.
Right. So how did people react? What did the residents do, according to the sources?
They organized. Again, they formed something called the Gillitts Park Street Watch, described as a neighborhood watch group, but proactive.
Proactive how? What methods did they use?
The sources detail this quite well. Residents basically contracted a service provider for, like, dedicated cell phone links between members, instant communication.
So neighbors watching out for each other, technologically enabled.
Exactly. Watching out for each other's properties and working really closely with the local police.
And did it work? What were the results mentioned?
The results reported in the material sound pretty dramatic. In this neighborhood of about 860 homes, they made, or helped make, 9 arrests of housebreakers in just 4 weeks.
9 arrests in 4 weeks. Wow.
Yeah. And the sources say that after this concerted effort, the crime rate dropped off significantly. It's presented as a clear win for community action tackling a specific problem.
And the Street Watch had other goals too, didn't it? Beyond just security.
Yes, the sources mention that. It wasn't only about crime. They also aimed to sort of rebuild a sense of community spirit, bring neighbors together more, and also to keep looking after the beautiful environment. It all tied together.
Quality of life, community, safety, environment. It's all linked.
That seems to be the message coming through from how the sources describe the Street Watch's aims.
Okay, so let's try and pull these threads together. Based on everything in the sources you shared with us, we've seen Gillitts' unique character starts with its geography, right? That elevation, the mist, setting it apart from Durban.
Definitely. The climate's a big part of its identity.
Then its place in the upper highway area, but with that slower, more organic growth compared to its neighbors, partly because it didn't have room to sprawl.
Yeah, that limited space factor is really interesting.
Its history as that huge farm, with tangible bits still visible today, like the old farmhouse on the golf course, and that amazing Boer War dam still holding water.
Living history right there.
The road network, mixing old and new routes, the specific cultural dimension from the Indian community off Stockville Road, those fireworks.
Anti-vibrancy.
Then Gillitts Park itself. Green, spacious, large plots, very little commerce, and that evocative old railway line, Maureen, the steam train bringing history alive once a month, even with the derelict but beautiful station.
Such specific, memorable details in the sources.
Absolutely. And then the environmental success story, the Ifithi Reserve, born from tackling invasive trees and funded by selling the timber. Just brilliant community action.
A real highlight, that one. Shows
Yep.
what's possible.
And finally, that response to the crime wave in 2009, the Street Watch, using communication, working with police, getting results, and reinforcing community bonds at the same time.
All these pieces, pulled from your sources, they don't just sit separately. They weave together to create this picture of Gillitts.
Yeah, it's a place shaped by its setting, definitely, but also deeply by its history and by the choices and actions of the people who live there, preserving nature, tackling problems.
It shows how a specific location holds all these layers. Geography, history, culture, community action, environmental effort. It's a unique blend.
It really is. This deep dive into the sources you provided highlights that fascinating mix: history, environment, culture, resilience. It really lets you see the personality of the place emerge from the details.
And maybe it leaves you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on, something building on all this material.
Mm-hmm.
What does this story of Gillitts really suggest? You know, its ability to keep its character partly through organic growth, to protect its green spaces through collective, even inventive action, and to tackle problems like crime by organizing at the grassroots level.
Yeah.
Well, what does that tell us about the key ingredients? What does it take for any neighborhood, anywhere, to hold on to its identity, to really thrive, especially when the world around it is changing so fast? That's the kind of question that bubbles up when you dig into the specifics like we just did.